Commander Syrinx clenched his fists, his pride bleeding. He would not admit fear, but deep inside a question rose. Who is she? On Earth, people no longer asked if humanity could survive. They asked something different. What are we truly capable of? Some said Baba Yaga was not just a woman. Some whispered she was a spirit, an ancient power born from Earth itself. Others believed she carried the rage of every human who had ever fought against oppression. Whatever the truth, it did not matter. She had shown the galaxy that humans were not helpless prey. That night, fires burned in the oceans where alien ships had fallen. Children stood on rooftops, pointing at the sky with pride. Soldiers who had doubted their cause lifted their weapons with new courage. The Dominion had come to break humanity's spirit. Instead, they had given them a symbol. And for the first time since the invasion began, the galaxy's greatest conquerors tasted defeat. It was not the last, it was only the beginning. The destruction of the Dominion fleet above Earth echoed far beyond the blue planet. Across the galaxy, the news traveled faster than light. On worlds ruled by fear, slaves whispered in the shadows. On planets broken by Dominion chains, people raised their heads for the first time in generations. A small, fragile race called humans had done the impossible. The Dominion tried to silence the story. They ordered their commanders to deny the defeat. They spread lies about engine failures and natural accidents. But no lie could erase the truth. Too many had seen the burning wreckage. Too many ships had failed at the same time. And too many voices spoke of the old woman who appeared inside Dominion systems. Her name passed like wildfire. Baba Yaga. In the markets of alien worlds, traders whispered the name with caution. In the dark halls of enslaved stations, workers spoke it like a prayer. Even in the armies of the Dominion, soldiers lowered their voices when they spoke of her. The Dominion had faced rebellions before, but never fear like this. Fear was spreading not among the weak, but among the strong. Commander Syrinx was furious. His claws scraped the command table as reports piled before him. Fleets disabled, officers humiliated. Entire crews whispering about the Witch of Death. He struck the table with his fist. Enough of this nonsense. She is only a woman, a primitive from a backwater planet. We are the Dominion. We rule 10,000 systems.
One witch will not change that.
But though his words were sharp, doubt grew even in his heart. He remembered her eyes on the screen glowing with a power that seemed older than stars, so he gathered a greater force. Not a few ships this time, but an entire battle group. Warships heavier than mountains, armed with weapons that had ended civilizations. He swore he would crush Earth completely, yet each time his ships came, they failed. One fleet vanished entirely, as if swallowed by the void. Another was torn apart by storms that appeared out of nowhere, storms that moved with intent, storms that followed only the Dominion. In one terrifying battle, half a dozen warships suddenly turned their weapons on each other, firing until none survived. The soldiers began to whisper. The humans are cursed. The Witch of Earth bends reality itself. The Dominion is doomed. And fear spread further. On planets enslaved for centuries, people looked to the sky and smiled. If the humans can resist, why not us? On battlefields where Dominion banners had once flown proudly, rebels began to rise. Small at first, but growing. The galaxy was watching. The galaxy was changing. Meanwhile, on Earth, humanity was awakening. For the first time in history, nations that had hated one another shook hands. Borders became less important than survival. Scientists who once competed now shared knowledge. Soldiers who once faced each other across battlefields now trained side by side. Baba Yaga's voice returned again and again, not only to the Dominion, but to her own people. Do not be afraid. Tyrants are always the same. They roar, they threaten, they demand obedience, and always they fall. The Dominion is no different. Stand tall, my children. Stand tall, and the stars themselves will remember your courage. Her words became fire in the hearts of billions. Children painted her face on walls. Young recruits swore oaths in her name. Farmers, miners, teachers, and builders, everyone gave something. Humanity was no longer just defending Earth. They were preparing for something greater. The Dominion thought they had found an easy conquest. Instead, they had awakened the spirit of a species that refused to kneel. And in the dark corners of the galaxy, where whispers carried more power than armies, one truth was spoken again and again: the humans were dangerous, the humans were rising. And at the center of it all, the name burned like fire across the stars: Baba Yaga. The fall of Dominion fleets did more than give Earth safety. It gave humanity hope. For the first time in centuries, the people of Earth forgot their divisions. Old enemies looked at one another and realized they were fighting the wrong war. The real enemy was above them in the stars, waiting to chain their world. Leaders met across continents. Their voices no longer shook with fear, but with determination. Soldiers stood shoulder to shoulder, not as Americans, Russians, Chinese, or Africans, but as humans. Humanity had been many nations before. Now they were one. Factories that once built cars or machines were turned into shipyards. Engineers who once designed aircraft now worked on vessels that could travel beyond Earth. Scientists unlocked secrets of propulsion, energy, and weapons with a speed that shocked even themselves. The whole world gave what it could. Farmers sent food to feed workers. Miners dug deeper to bring out the metals needed for ships. Children collected scrap and cheered as trucks carried it away. Humanity's first fleets would not be the biggest or strongest, but they would be born from unity, from the hands of every man, woman, and child who refused to bow, and through it all, the voice of Baba Yaga guided them. Sometimes she appeared on screens in crowded shipyards. Sometimes her words came across radios to tired soldiers at night. Her voice, old and rough, carried warmth that lifted hearts. Do not fear the darkness above. The stars do not belong to tyrants. They belong to those brave enough to reach for them. And we are brave. We always have been. Her words spread like fire. Painters drew her face on walls. Soldiers wrote her name on their helmets. Pilots whispered her blessing before launching into training flights. To the young, she was a grandmother protecting them. To the old, she was a reminder that courage never dies. The Dominion watched with growing anger. Their commanders could not understand how such a primitive people could build fleets in months. They did not understand how humans worked without rest, smiling through exhaustion. They did not understand that for humans, survival was not enough. They wanted freedom, dignity, and pride, and so, ship by ship, humanity rose. The first warships were small, clumsy, nothing compared to the sleek giants of the Dominion. But to humans, they were symbols. Each vessel launched into the sky was a promise: we will not kneel. Young pilots stepped forward by the thousands. Some were barely out of school, yet they trained with burning determination. They learned to fly ships not just with hands, but with hearts that refused to surrender. Families wept as their sons and daughters left for duty, but the tears were mixed with pride. In villages, old veterans taught the young about courage. In cities, crowds gathered to watch the new fleets rise, their cheers echoing across the streets. Humanity was no longer asking how long they could survive. They were asking how far they could go, and always when doubt threatened, Baba Yaga returned. Children of Earth, you carry the fire of all who came before you. The Dominion believes they are gods. Let them believe. We will show them the truth, that no empire lasts forever and no conqueror can break the human spirit. Her words did not only echo on Earth. Across the galaxy, enslaved races listened in secret. They heard the human grandmother's defiance. They heard the laughter in her voice when she spoke of tearing down empires. And they began to whisper to themselves, if the humans can stand, why not us? The Dominion had come to Earth to demand tribute. Instead, they had united a fractured world into a single, unbreakable people. Humanity was no longer waiting for survival. Humanity was preparing for war. The Dominion had been humiliated again and again, but pride is a dangerous thing. Commander Serix could no longer bear the whispers spreading through the galaxy. His name, once feared, was now followed by laughter. To restore his power, he summoned the greatest fleet the Dominion had ever sent to one world. Thousands of warships, colossal titans that blotted out the stars, gathered in orbit. Their weapons could shatter moons. Their engines could burn oceans. Entire civilizations had fallen to less. Now all of that power was pointed at one small blue planet, Earth. When the Armada appeared, people across the world looked up in silence. For a moment, fear returned. The sky itself seemed to break under the shadow of so many ships. Mothers held their children close. Soldiers gripped their rifles, though they knew. The night sky over Earth was quiet, filled with stars that had shone the same way for millions of years. Children looked at them with wonder. Lovers whispered beneath them. Scientists studied them with curiosity. To humans, the stars were distant, untouchable, and beautiful. But that night, the stars changed. From the endless, dark, massive shapes appeared. They were not meteors. They were not satellites. They were ships, colossal ships, black and jagged, moving in silence. Each was larger than a city. Each glowed with strange blue fire that pulsed like a living heart. Slowly, they slid into orbit above Earth, blocking out constellations humans had known for generations. At first, people thought it was a dream. Cameras turned upward, recording shaky images of the impossible. Social media exploded with panic. Some laughed nervously, calling it a trick. But when every news channel cut to the same live feed, when governments admitted they had no warning, fear began to spread. And then, the voice came. Every screen flickered. Every radio, every phone, even silent speakers suddenly carried the same sound. It was deep and cold, filled with authority that seemed inhuman. Humans, I am Commander Serix of the Galactic Dominion. Your world is now part of the Empire. You will pay tribute in resources, labor, and loyalty. Refuse and you will burn. People froze. Shops went silent. Families huddled together, staring at televisions. Soldiers in bases gripped their rifles, though they knew rifles were useless against ships that could swallow oceans. Leaders in war rooms exchanged fearful glances. The voice continued, sharp and cruel. The Dominion rules 10,000 worlds. We have crushed empires greater than yours before your kind learned to walk upright. You are weak. You are small. But you may live if you kneel. The message ended. Silence filled the world. But it was not the silence of peace. It was the silence of fear. In cities, people wept openly. In villages, elders whispered prayers. Across the planet, the same question rose: what can we do? Humanity had fought wars against itself for centuries, but never had it faced something like this. Earth's weapons, its armies, its proud nations, what were they compared to giants that crossed galaxies? Some leaders spoke quickly. We cannot win. We must negotiate. If they want tribute, give it. If they want obedience, give it. Survival is all that matters, others argued fiercely. No, if we surrender, we are slaves forever. Better to die fighting than live chained. The world was divided. Fear pressed down like a heavy stone. And yet far away from the great cities, in a quiet Siberian village surrounded by endless forests, one old woman listened to the aliens' demand. She sat on her porch, pipe glowing in the night, as her neighbors whispered in terror. She was small, bent with age, but her eyes burned like embers. When the voice of Commander Serix ended, she laughed. It was not a cruel laugh. It was not mad. It was sharp, defiant, almost joyful, as if she had been waiting her whole life for such a moment. The children looked at her with wide eyes. Baba Yaga, are you not afraid? The old woman's lips curved into a thin smile. She tapped the ash from her pipe, stood slowly, and looked up at the sky where the alien ships glowed. Her voice was quiet, but it carried strength that shook the hearts of those who heard it. Afraid? No, children. Let them come. They do not know what kind of people we are. Her name was Baba Yaga, and though the galaxies did not yet know it, the woman who laughed at conquerors would soon change everything. Across Earth, chaos spread after the first message from the Galactic Dominion. Some governments gathered in secret rooms, voices shaking as they argued. Some leaders said surrender was the only way. They spoke of saving lives, of avoiding destruction. Others slammed their fists on tables, shouting that humans must fight, even if it meant death. Ordinary people watched helplessly. Families sat glued to their televisions. Workers abandoned factories and gathered in the streets. Teachers tried to calm crying children, but they too were afraid. Everywhere, one feeling rose stronger than all others: helplessness. Humanity had faced tyrants, dictators, and conquerors before, but always against flesh and blood, against enemies they could see and fight. Now they faced an empire from the stars. Then the voice of Commander Serix returned. This time it carried arrogance and anger. Humans, you are too slow to decide. Bow to the Dominion now, or we will strike. You are nothing. You exist because we allow it. Pay tribute, or you will die screaming. The words stabbed into the hearts of billions. Children clung to their parents. Soldiers clenched their teeth but lowered their heads. Even the bravest leaders felt despair. And then something impossible happened. The broadcast was interrupted. The alien voice was cut off mid-sentence, replaced by the sound of a cough, a chuckle, and then a new voice. Rasping, old, but steady and unshakable. You dare demand tribute from us? Idiots, you don't even know who we are. The world went silent. Billions of people stared at their screens in disbelief. This was not a president, not a general, not a scientist. It was the voice of Baba Yaga, the old woman from the Siberian village. Somehow her face appeared on every device, every feed, as if she had stolen the Dominion's control. Her wrinkled face filled the screen. Smoke curled from her pipe. Her eyes, sharp and fierce, cut through the fear. You look at humans and see prey. You see fragile bodies and small worlds, but you do not see the fire inside us. You do not know our history. For every empire that tried to chain us, we broke the chains. For every tyrant who raised a whip, we snapped it. You think yourselves gods. To us, you are only fools. If you want tribute, come take it. But know this, if you set foot on our soil, you will not leave alive. The aliens laughed. On their ships, commanders sneered at the sight of a bent old woman speaking with such boldness. They called her insane, a primitive, a joke. To them, she was nothing more than noise. But to humans, her words struck like lightning. In homes where people had been trembling, fathers stood taller. Mothers wiped their tears and held their children with pride. Soldiers who had doubted themselves lifted their heads. Across the globe, humanity felt something stirring inside them. A fire they thought had gone out. In villages, people repeated her words. In cities, they painted her face on walls. In bases, young recruits shouted her name as if it were a battle cry. She had done what no leader could. She had taken fear and broken it. For the first time since the alien ships appeared, humanity remembered who they were. They were not weak. They were not helpless. They were the children of survivors, the descendants of warriors, builders, and dreamers who had always refused to kneel. Baba Yaga's voice, though old and cracked, carried the weight of centuries of human defiance. And as the Dominion watched, amused and dismissive, they failed to see what was already happening. An awakening. Humanity was no longer divided. Humanity was no longer begging for mercy. Humanity was beginning to believe, and belief, more than any weapon, was the first step to resistance. Commander Sarix did not like being mocked. The Dominion had ruled the stars for thousands of years. Entire civilizations had been wiped out for speaking less boldly than the human crone. To him, this was not only defiance, it was humiliation. He ordered a lesson. A fleet of warships was dispatched to Earth. Not the full armada, only enough to make an example. The target was chosen. A coastal city with millions of people. The plan was simple. Erase it from existence, and the rest of humanity would kneel in terror. When the black ships entered the sky, the world trembled. Sirens wailed. Families crowded into shelters. Soldiers raised weapons they knew were useless. Leaders begged the aliens to stop, promising talks, promising tribute. But the Dominion did not answer. Their weapons began to glow with deadly light. People looked to the heavens, certain that death was falling. Mothers whispered final prayers. Children buried their faces into their fathers' arms. The world braced itself for fire. And then, something happened. One by one, the Dominion ships began to flicker. Their lights dimmed. Their engines sputtered. Commanders shouted in confusion. Screens filled with static. Weapons that had been charging with blue energy went dark. Then every display on every ship lit up with the same face. It was her, Baba Yaga. Her eyes burned brighter than the alien engines. Her voice, though calm, carried the weight of thunder. You dare touch my children? The Dominion soldiers felt a chill. Many had fought in countless wars. Many had slaughtered billions without fear. But now an old human woman's voice filled their ships, and they felt something new, dread. Their systems failed completely. One ship exploded from within, its reactor tearing it apart. The blast knocked others into chaos. Pilots tried to escape, but their controls turned against them. Some ships collided, others spiraled helplessly into the sea. On Earth, people watched with wide eyes. Instead of fire raining upon them, they saw alien wreckage burning in the sky. A roar of disbelief swept through the city. Tears turned to cries of joy. Strangers embraced each other, shouting the same name. Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga! In the Dominion command ship, panic spread. Officers screamed at their consoles. How could a primitive world with no real defenses cripple their fleet? How could one woman seize their systems? No answer came. Only fear. Rifles would do nothing. But then a different sound rose. It was not despair. It was defiance. From hidden launch bays and vast new shipyards, humanity's first real fleets lifted into the heavens. They were not many compared to the Dominion, and they were not as sleek or advanced. But they carried something stronger than technology. They carried the will of an entire species that refused to kneel. Pilots whispered Baba Yaga's name as they strapped themselves into their cockpits. Engineers watched their creations take flight, tears of pride in their eyes. Crowds filled city streets looking upward, shouting blessings to the ships rising into the dark. And then she appeared. At the heart of humanity's fleet was a ship like no other. Black as the void, silent as a shadow, it moved with a grace no Dominion vessel could match. From its bridge, the figure of Baba Yaga stood, her frail form wrapped in an aura of unshakable strength. When her voice filled the comms, even the Dominion heard it. Commander Sarix, you asked for tribute. You demanded our chains. Now you will pay for your arrogance. You will pay with fire. The battle began. The Dominion unleashed their full fury. Thousands of weapons lit the sky with blinding light. Explosions shook the heavens. Human ships were torn apart, burning trails marking the sacrifice of brave souls. Yet for every vessel that fell, another surged forward. The humans moved like fire itself, fast, unpredictable, refusing to stop. They fought not for conquest, but for home, for family, for freedom. And that made them dangerous. Dominion commanders shouted in confusion. Their massive fleets should have crushed this resistance in minutes. Yet human ships darted through gaps, striking weak points, tearing down giants piece by piece. Where skill failed, courage carried them further. And then, Baba Yaga struck. Her black ship cut through the battlefield like a blade. Dominion vessels tried to target her, but their weapons misfired, their systems scrambled. Screens flickered with her burning eyes. She was everywhere, inside their controls, inside their fear. At last, her ship reached the flagship. Commander Sarix stood tall, his claws sharp, his pride unbroken. But when her image filled his bridge, silence fell. Her voice was low, steady, merciless. You asked for tribute, alien. Here is my tribute. Your end. Before his soldiers could react, her ship's weapons unleashed a storm unlike anything the Dominion had seen. The flagship cracked, split apart, and exploded in a blaze that lit the entire battle. With their commander gone, the Dominion fleet broke. Some tried to flee. Others fought without direction, falling one by one. Human cheers filled the comms as victory, impossible only hours ago, became real. On Earth, billions watched as the sky cleared. The armada that had promised death now burned in silence. The blue planet still stood. Baba Yaga's voice echoed across the stars. Let all tyrants hear this. Humanity does not bow. We are the fire that devours empires. Come again if you dare. We will be waiting. The galaxy listened, and it would never forget the war was over. The great armada of the Dominion lay in ruins, its burning remains drifting in silence above Earth. For the first time in countless centuries, the unstoppable empire had been stopped. Not by another empire, not by a race of gods, but by humans, a species the galaxy once called weak. On Earth, celebrations shook the world. Crowds filled the streets, waving flags of every color. Children laughed and sang the name of Baba Yaga. Soldiers, bruised and bloodied, lifted their heads proudly. Families who had prayed for survival now danced for victory. The night sky, once dark with enemy fire, now glittered with the promise of freedom. But beyond Earth, something greater was happening. Across the galaxy, enslaved races listened to the news. On broken planets, rebels lit fires of resistance. In the mines of conquered worlds, workers raised their tools not as instruments of labor, but as weapons. In hidden corners of space, people spoke a single truth in hushed voices that soon became shouts. The Dominion can be defeated. And always, when they spoke of courage, when they spoke of defiance, they spoke of her, Baba Yaga. Some called her the Witch of Death. Others named her the Mother of Fire. To humans, she was a grandmother who refused to bend. To aliens, she became something more, a living legend, a shadow that haunted tyrants, a voice that promised doom to conquerors. The Dominion, once feared, now trembled. Their fleets retreated, afraid to face the cursed world again. Their soldiers whispered about Earth as if it were poison. Some deserted, unwilling to fight a people who could summon storms and turn machines against their masters. But humanity did not chase conquest. They did not demand tribute from others. Instead, they rebuilt. They mourned their dead, honored their heroes, and strengthened their bonds. Nations that had once hated each other now stood together, for they had seen the cost of division and the power of unity. In shipyards, new vessels were built, not to invade, but to protect. In schools, children learned not only science and history, but also the story of how their people had stood against the stars. They grew up with pride, knowing they were part of something greater than fear. And Baba Yaga? No one knew exactly where she went. Some said she returned to her quiet village in Siberia, tending her fire and smoking her pipe as if nothing had happened. Others claimed she still walked among the stars, watching, waiting, guarding her children. A few believed she was not human at all, but something older, something born from the spirit of resistance itself. But to humanity, it did not matter. Whether she lived or vanished into legend, her voice remained. It echoed in every heart, a reminder that no power was too great to be challenged. Her final words still burned in the memory of billions. Humanity does not bow. Humanity destroys tyrants. Humanity endures. The galaxy would never forget those words. And so, in taverns on distant worlds, in camps of rebels and in palaces of frightened rulers, the story of Earth was told. A story of a small planet that stood against an empire. A story of a people who refused chains. A story of an old woman who looked at gods and called them fools. The story of Baba Yaga, the witch who taught the galaxy to fear humanity. And from that day forward, whenever conquerors rose, whenever empires threatened the weak, they remembered Earth. They remembered the fire that lived in the hearts of humans, and they hesitated. For even in the darkest corners of the universe, one truth had been carved into history forever. Humanity does not kneel.